Hey everyone, this week we're talking about pre-production. This is going to be a really simple and quick video actually, but if you've been smiling and nodding along in all of your business meetings and circles, and you're like, oh yes, pre-production, but secretly inside you're like, I don't know what that is, then that's what this video is for. So let's dig into it. In a super simple nutshell, pre-production is the process, and there's a lot of process that comes before you get on one of these things and you hit record. It is a process that is meant to provide you with really great structure and really good guidance so that you can have a sustainable production, that you save some time, money, and energy, especially the money part. Saving some money is a really good thing. And also it enables you to think in a long-term growth pattern, to really think about like, where am I going with this, rather than just that dopamine hit of like, woohoo, I got on a mic, look at me, I feel fancy. That is fun, but it's also very costly. And as a systems expert, I have always been on the side of you, my clients. I'm always like, don't overspend your money. You don't need to. It's a wasted effort. I've seen a lot of people flush lots of money down the drain doing really fancy experiments, and it's just not a happy place to exist in your business. Raise your hand if you have started a YouTube channel, or if you've started a podcast, or if you've attempted over and over and over again to send out a consistent weekly email newsletter, which, by the way, we all know you really need to do, because email is the one thing that you can control in your business. You can't control the free social networks, which can change on a dime, as we have seen them do, but maybe you even struggle to show up there consistently, and you're like, oh, this thing is so hard. And then what happens is you sign up for another marketing program and another coaching program, and they all promise you the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they make one fatal flaw. And that flaw is that they will focus with you on either your branding and your image, which is part of it, but like this much of the pie, or they'll overly focus on storytelling, which is also really important, but is also not inclusive of your production systems. So again, about this much of the pie. Or they'll focus on your business strategy, like if you have guests on your show, how you're going to pull those people in, or the marketing strategy of getting the word out. And so you end up with this collection of courses, and you end up with this collection of bills that you have paid to coaches and programs, and you're just like, why do I still not have a finished product? And all of those problems can be solved in pre-production. So pre-production is all of the things that come before you start recording and you start going into full production, which is raw material, which is then going to be edited, and it's going to go through post-production so that it can be published and shared with the world online. Now, I also service heart-based and intuitive and spiritual entrepreneurs. And for you folks, you're getting a lot of emotional data and intuitive data, and you want to incorporate those things too. And you should be able to do that. But if you're working in someone else's formula that is pushing you through a pipeline, which they have devised, doesn't necessarily take into account what you need, you end up in a production process that is unsustainable for you. What I am encouraging my audience of people to do right now is to focus on pre-production and take a little bit longer with it. There is this impatience right now in the world, which is, on one hand, incredibly fascinating to watch, but on the other hand is incredibly infuriating, because everything doesn't just happen magically overnight. And I've seen this impatience for hearing a full message, watching a full video. Kudos to you if you're still watching at this point, because most people will check out after 30 seconds and then they never really get the lesson that they're looking for. There's also a need to go look up information or to go watch what other people are doing. Figure out what you need. Collect your puzzle pieces. put them together. That takes some time, and pre-production shows you how much time you need before it is sustainable to hit record. At Sensible Woo, there used to be a 12-month incubator mastermind program, and many, many, many moons ago when it was first birthed, there was an amazing client of mine in the program, and she said, "Oh, this makes total sense because you are your best system." And it became the tagline for a lot of what I do around Sensible Woo. You are your best system. And so in pre-production, you really want to be a little selfish in that way of saying, I am my best system. What do I need first as the primary system for this whole show to happen? What do I need to do? For some people, it is literally grounding your nervous system and getting yourself into a place where you're not like reacting. And you're like, okay, I am making logical choices that are grounded in reality, and I'm not going to flame out. And it's not just some, puff of wind idea. Like, this thing actually has legs. Now I can think about it and I can move forward. There are other folks who need to spend a little time literally cleaning up their systems, just like we used to do in my incubator. Or like, you need to clean out everything from your calendar to your email and make space to do production. Production is going to require time on your calendar. It's going to require your energy. And if you're still playing catch up on everything else that happens inside your business, where are you going to get the extra hours in the day or the energy in your body if you're like, I don't know where to fit this in? Why am I so exhausted all the time in my business? Again, you are your best system. So are you taking care of you as a system? The sexy side of pre-production that I see a lot of people run straight for is the storytelling. They're like, I'm ready to script. I'm ready to figure out my taglines and my titles and my branding package and all of those things. And that is a very exciting part of it. But if you don't give yourself time to really marinate and sit with it, you're going to end up creating something that needs adjustments later. And that becomes an expensive fix because now you've got to go back and retroactively change things, or you have to adjust what you're doing while you're in the middle of production, which can be very costly if you've decided to change your format, or you need to rearrange your speaker lineup, or as I frequently see with people, because they rush in, they'll buy a bunch of fancy things. They don't know how to use it. Turns out they didn't get everything they needed, or they bought the wrong thing. And then they have to change the equipment. And what happens is you end up with audio differences, you end up with video differences. Now, some people don't care. They're just like, let's go, we're good. But I find that a lot of my entrepreneurs like to be a little bit more thoughtful. And honestly, so do I. So what I would encourage you to do is to take a breather and find a way to collect your thoughts. Now, not everybody is good at doing this. If you can do this on your own, you don't need something like my Voxer coaching container package. My hat is off to you. For everybody else, that is why programs and coaching do exist. And having a space that isn't going to force you into a predefined funnel of production activities, that is going to be something that you really want to keep your eye out for. Again, it can be very tempting because you're like, how do I get to the glamorous microphone stage as soon as possible? And what happens is you end up following somebody else's process. And then halfway through, you're like, I hate this process. I don't like this process. This process doesn't work for me. Or you become overly reliant only on their production crew to help you with things like editing and marketing and whatnot. And you're like, something's not right. And that can become very, very costly to have to break up with them and reestablish new help and to continue to keep your momentum. You exhaust yourself, you waste your energy, you spend a lot of extra money. Notice I didn't say waste money. I said you end up spending a lot of extra money that it could be a little bit more frugal along the way, even if you choose to do big production like I like doing, which is in person in studios. The number one thing that I do with folks in pre-production is let's do an entrepreneurial nervous system check-in. Are you in a space of making good grounded decisions? Or are you coming at it from a place where you're trying to solve a problem through a different doorway? Like, do you really just need to get some quick cash in the door right now? Because I got news for you, friend. Getting on a microphone and making a podcast is not the solution for that. So what we want to do is figure out what is the actual need so we can keep your business nervous system as regulated as possible. And then that way you can start thinking more creatively and you can actually have some fun with it. So in the future, I'll probably do another video because I've been working in systems for so long that I use the word systems, and I also see people smile and nod at the word systems and operations, and they're like, and push comes to shove, and they're like, I don't actually know what it is. What I will tell you here is that your systems, when it comes to pre-production and later production, is all about your process, and it is about making things repeatable. Can you replicate what you do with ease? If you are recreating the wheel every single time, you are going to drive yourself nuts. And there is a really big magical factor in all of this that actually I feel gets solved in pre-production, and that is you. It is your voice. It is how you choose to show up. It is how you end up coming across to your audience, which can be very casual. Like, I'm wearing hardly any makeup today. I'm just sort of sitting at home, literally in sweatpants. And it's fine. It's comfortable. But there are some people where there is an image that you would like to portray. There is a brand that you would like to enforce. And in that case, you have a little bit extra you need to think about. But when you get on the microphone and you're in the studio or you're at home and you're on your new fancy software and you are recording with your guest or you're recording by yourself, that is not the time to figure out, what's my voice? How do I talk to people? How do I convey my energy out? Because what happens is you'll get the files back and you'll see the edited product. And I've seen this happen with so many people, and they're kind of disappointed. They're like, oh, I felt like I was really big, but I don't look that way. And my answer for you is, in pre-production is where you seek the help for things like acting coaching, speaking coaching, conversational practice. That all happens in pre-production. I am not of the bro dude crowd where I think fail fast, fail harder is the secret sauce to entrepreneurship. I actually took years to figure out when and how to launch School of Moxie podcast because I didn't want to contribute to the noise. I'm pretty sure you don't either. And I wanted to make sure it was something that felt like me and it was unique. And that's exactly what we did. We took the movie TV analogies I'd been writing on newsletters all through COVID and then turned it into a podcast focusing on one show. For season 2, it's the same concept. We're taking another TV show. This time, because I've spent longer in pre-production for this season, it gave me a chance to recognize that this was not a season for guests. I was trying to slot guests into that, and I discovered that this is a solo season. So I've actually been scripting and writing those episodes, and then I will be recording them soon. What that does for me is it has saved me buku bucks. So instead of starting the process of lining up my guests and getting them in, which is a logistics exercise in and of itself and needs to be done well, otherwise you end up with a big hot mess on your hands. That all costs time, money, energy. Instead of having that, gave me a chance to figure it out so I didn't head down a wrong path and then have to backtrack in order to do the thing that really needed to happen in the creative process. Your pre-production process can also show you what kind of format you really want to work in. There's been this ongoing trend in entrepreneurial podcasts and business podcasts that are very heavy on the weekly format. You publish every week and you always have a guest in, and you hear about podcasters burning out and they're super tired and they say it was really expensive to produce because they're just feeding a content beast. And for what? So spend your time in pre-production and figure out, what kind of format do you want? Who do you see doing interesting things out in the podcast world or on YouTube or in a newsletter every week? And how are you going to make space and energy so that you can produce such a thing in your business as well? What kind of help do you need? Where are you confident in your skills? Do you want to learn a new skill? Do you have time for that? Or do you need to budget out some money so that you can pay for some overhead to have an editor help you or have a marketing team help you? Where are you going to make concessions on the first round, but then improve it on the next round? And you can think through all those things during pre-production and have quite the master plan that's going to set you up for a very sustainable production process as the years tick on by. And here's the secret. If you're still sticking with me in this video, there is a secret in online entrepreneurship that's not really a secret, and I'm kind of disappointed more people don't talk about it. But because so many people burn out because they can't sustain what they're doing, there's kind of this dance of last person standing, where there's a fair number of people who do last longer than everyone else, and there are fewer and fewer and fewer people standing next to them as time goes on. And do you know what happens? They're the ones that you pay attention to. They're the ones whose podcasts you continue to listen to because everybody else checked out. They stopped publishing. They're the ones whose YouTube videos you continue to watch because they didn't burn out and they continue to evolve and they continue to produce because their production process at that point is so well honed. It's easy. It's effortless. It flows. It's easy to change ideas and directions and branding and tone at that point. That is inconsequential. The process of getting that going and getting that polished to a degree where you can just produce and produce and produce, that is the business. And that, my friends, is systems. And that's why you need your pre-production process. And it's why you should spend longer in your pre-production process than you think. So if you were thinking you were going to launch a podcast next week, I would say start by doubling it and say, what would happen if I waited 2 weeks? And in 2 weeks' time, you're going to discover, oh, all the things I didn't know that I didn't know. And so double it again. What if I took 4 weeks now? And then you're going to start to get smarter about what you're doing. So if you thought you were going to launch a podcast next year, what if you spend the coming year in pre-production and launch the following year? You're not missing out on the market. The market will be there for you. People want compelling things, but they also want it done well. And they definitely want you sticking around if it's done well. Because if you burn out or you run out of money, then guess what? Nobody gets anything. You don't get anything and neither does your audience. So who wins? Nobody. And that is like the opposite of doing good pre-production. Now you've heard how I would define pre-production. There are all kinds of templates you can use to create scripts and whatnot. That actually is not your problem. Your problem is figuring yourself out as a system first so that you can make something sustainable and decide if this is something you want to do long term, or is it like a limited series instead of doing multiple seasons or week after week after week of production. Maybe it's like a list of 12 topics and you deliver them and you can use them to help nurture your audience. Who knows what you're going to produce? I can't wait to see what it is. I do feel like YouTube and podcasts are going through an evolution right now where the original people who got real big in the spaces are burning out and they're leaving the spaces, making room for the rest of you. So why wouldn't you hop in on it? It's like the perfect time to do it, but you do need to be patient and you also do need to utilize systems, starting with yourself as a system. So if you want to do that with me, there is a link below this video and you can apply for a mentoring spot with me. I do a 30-day pre-production process with people so you can get started. And then from there, you can decide, do you like working with me? Do you want to keep going forward? Or did you learn something and now you're going to take it away and go work on other things? So that way you can save yourself a boatload of money and time and energy. And if that seems like too much right now, then you can just subscribe for free to my weekly email newsletter, which is a production process business all on its own, and you can see what it's like to receive an email from somebody who produces their own newsletter every week. It's like an e-magazine, and you can see, does that inspire you instead, and start getting curious about what it is you want before you start hitting record and do what you think you should, or what looks really sexy, what everyone else is doing, and you'll be the smartest entrepreneur in the room, hitting home runs all the way. And at the end, you're going to be the last one standing, and that'll be really good for you.